Awesome. So I'm Dr. Maren Wood. I am the director, CEO, and founder of Beyond the Professoriate. The PhD career training platform is provided to you by your institution. So for those people that were attending live, I just gave them a brief overview of the PhD career training platform. Know that the resources in the platform, for those of you that are watching the replay, you have a lot of questions, and the PhD career training platform is really designed to help you move forward in your job search. So next week, after you finish watching the conference, please make sure you're logging back in and that you're taking a look at those additional resources, especially the ones that are under step 3 for applying for non-academic jobs. Lots of resources there on networking, LinkedIn, resources for international students, etc. But what I want to talk about today is a little bit more time sensitive in the fact that it's a really difficult job market right now for international students. It's a difficult job market for everyone right now, but especially for international students job searching in the United States. There's a lot of anti-immigration sentiments, a lot of limitations around visas and opportunities for immigrants right now. And so we really need to be thinking strategically and broadly about career options for international students in a way that we didn't a year or two ago, and a way that we might not 2 or 3 years down the line. So, what I want to talk about today are I want you to start by assessing your current situation and your set of priorities. We had a lot of students and postdocs who were registering for the conference early on in their programs of study, which is fantastic. But if you're in year 1, 2, or 3 of your program, my advice to you is going to be slightly different than for those students and postdocs who are trying to enter the job market now or in the next year. So we really need to assess, if we're thinking about my advice for international students, my advice is going to be different depending on where you're at in your program. So I'm going to share a couple of different options depending on your 1, 2, or 3, or if you're graduating or if you're a postdoc. And then the other thing I really want to emphasize is that today's presentation is going to be about unlocking opportunities in industry. We won't be talking too much about academic jobs, but we will in August. We've got some resources for applying for academic jobs. But I want to help you maximize your options. And so I want you to think about, what utilizing the best strategies that we are able to share with you to try and maximize your success in landing a job in industry. Nothing is foolproof, meaning you might do everything that I advise you to do and then some, and it might not lead to an opportunity just because of the current political and economic situation. That's not a reflection of you. That's not a reflection of your abilities. It's not even a reflection of the value that people see in you. You'll be networking with people and they'll be talking to you and be very excited about you. A lot of this is just being driven by policies that are actually really quite unpopular, but they are the policies of the day. The other thing I really want you to keep in mind is that right now, because of AI and the uncertainties caused by tariffs and uncertainties caused by the war with Iran, that it's taking a lot longer for people to land first opportunities. So right now, we're seeing 6 to 9 months for domestic students, and that might be longer for international students and scholars because you have to find the right company who has the resources and abilities to actually offer you sponsorship. And so it might take you a little bit longer. Now, I do have some suggestions for those of you that need a job sooner on how to supercharge your network, because I know not everyone has 6 to 9 months. But for those of you that are in your program and you're thinking like, when is it too early to start thinking about non-academic jobs? The answer is never. It's never too early to start. So if you're in year 1, 2, or 3, there are things that you can be doing right now to help set you up for success when you graduate. If you've got more than a year out, we can start now this summer, starting to think about options and preparing for a job search. Now, there's a lot going on, and you might be worried about. You might be hearing some things, right? You might be hearing through conversations or the news that AI is replacing entry-level positions and is reducing opportunities for those that are making a career transition. You might have heard that job creation has been slowing outside of healthcare fields, especially technology opportunities, biomedical opportunities, There's been a decline in finance. So you might be hearing those things. We're still looking at a low hire, low fire economy. This is coming from the Federal Reserve, meaning that companies are retaining current employees. Employees aren't necessarily leaving. And that means that there's fewer opportunities for those of us that are trying to enter the workforce. There's a lot of economic and political unrest in the US and globally, and it really is impacting career options right now for those people who are not currently working in industry. There's a lot that's happening right now around visas, especially H-1B visas, and a lot of it is unclear. Diane and I were just having this conversation before the present, like our presentation. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of proposals, there's a lot of infighting, there's a lot of confusion, and so you can't control these things, right? So this is a lot of things to worry about. What we want to do is actually focus on things that you can control. You have an opportunity right now with your PhD program or your postdocs to have an incredible educational opportunity in the United States. And I want you to really focus on that. I want you, wherever you go next, whether it's in the academy, whether it's in industry, whether you stay in Canada or the United States, or whether you go to Europe, or whether you go to India or China, wherever it is that you go after your PhD, what the education that you're getting now is going to set you up for career success. So just enjoy it and really dig in and find a richness of opportunities to build skills, build relationships, and have a really positive educational experience. But you also want to make a plan. And it's great to have a dream job, but you also have to have a couple of backup options right now because knowing you have options is actually empowering, right? That's one thing we can do. We can say, like, here's my plan A, but if that doesn't work, I know I've got plan B and I've got plan C, and I know how to execute those quickly if they're needed. One of the things that we've been really emphasizing this week is successful job search strategies to navigate today's hiring economy. Really, really, really learn how to job search, use the PhD career training platform, and don't focus on the number of applications that you're submitting, right? We call this the application trap. Be smart, build relationships, be strategic when you apply, because submitting resumes into the hot, holy mess of the internet is not going to be a successful strategy. And you're going to waste a lot of time that you would be better spent building relationships with people who work at companies of interest, trying to outsmart the algorithms to get your resume read and a job. And the other thing you really need to do, and I forgot to add this slide in, but I want you to make sure that you're building networks. You want to build it with networks, expats, and professionals who are working in careers of interest. You will need to ask for help, right? And it's not like help getting a job, but you will need to ask for help getting advice. If visa applications, postdoc opportunities, just if people don't know that you need help, they can't help you. So I was recently at a partner institution and they were talking about how they were trying to help their students who are Iranian because they realized that the students cannot return home because of the current situation but they knew that about those student situations, and so the institution was able to help those students because they knew that the student needed help. So you can't just be like help, you have to have specific things that you need from people, but if people don't know that you need help, they can't help you. Now, before we get into the rest of the presentation, and this is probably going to run long today, it's a pretty long presentation. I want you to keep in mind a couple of things about the US and about the US federal system. This is different than it might work in your home country. The US is a republic and it's a democracy, and it is a complex system of checks and balances. It's designed to be slow and it's designed to be inefficient. This isn't great news for you because it means that there's a lot of uncertainty, but it is it means that you're going to hear a lot of noise. So there's regulations, around visas or H-1B visas or ability to stay, those kinds of things. Those are all rules and regulations that are being put out by different departments and agencies. Some of them aren't even laws. They're just rules and regulations, advice, things that they're going to start implementing. And all of that gets challenged. So like as soon as something gets like proposed and then implemented, it goes through a series of court challenges. That's true whether it's the Democrats who are running the government or the Republicans. That's how the American system is designed. And then, so just because something is proposed, it might never actually take effect. And while the things are being litigated, courts actually have the option to decide if something is going to take effect or if it's actually going to be paused and then litigated. So even though like something goes to the courts, we still have this whole process of like it might start happening, it might not start happening. And the other thing to keep in mind is that we've got midterms coming up, and Congress in the United States typically changes parties every 2 years, and the presidency changes parties typically every 4 to 8 years. So, what this means is there's a lot of uncertainty that is affecting your situation because of policies and regulations that may or may not take effect. So, what does this mean for you? First of all, any email that is sent to you from your Office of International Students or Scholars, you want to open, right? You want to make sure that you are like your institution is going to be talking to you and sharing updates and information with you as it takes effect. They're not going to be alarmist, so they're going to wait until they actually have information to share with you. They're not going to share like, oh, this regulation was proposed and everything might go, this way. They're just going to wait until there's actual implementation that's going to affect you. Make sure that you are opening and talking to people at your International Students and Scholars Office. They will be your best, most reliable source of information. If you are going to follow the news, which I don't know, depending on your mental health and how you're feeling on today, you may or may not want to be reading the news. But if you do, make sure that you're following accurate and reliable news agencies, because they will tell you things like it's been challenged, it's been put on hold, this is happening, this is happening, this is the update. So things that I find to be reliable, and this is just me, are things like Reuters or the Associated Press. They don't have a lot of sensational commentary. So those are things you want to avoid. You don't need to be having your heart rate like through the roof because of sensational news stories. So try and make sure that you're following reliable stories that are giving you accurate information and that are not sensationalizing the challenges. You don't need that. There are a lot of legal, immigration attorneys and law firms. They have LinkedIn pages, they have LinkedIn posts, they may be active on Blue Sky or Threads. So we follow them because they will be writing about like what's happening in real time and where we are in like different litigation. So when I'm interested in learning about like what's happening right now, I Google some of these questions, and I like to go to law firm websites and blog posts and LinkedIn posts because it gives me a better sense of like where we're at in terms of things actually taking place and what the actual implementation would be. And depending on the resources that you have, you may want to contract with an immigration attorney. That costs money. So everything else I've just told you is free. You can talk to your OISS office, read the news, and follow like legal advice on social. But if you're really concerned and you need some additional resources and advice, you may consider like actually hiring an immigration attorney who can give you the advice that you need that's specific to your situation. All right, so we want to start by assessing your current situation. When are you planning to go on the job market, and what are your priorities? That will inform your next steps. Now, I want you to start by assessing your visa situation because we get a lot of questions sometimes from postdocs who are on like J1 visas. And so your situation is very different from graduate students or postdocs who are on OPT. So F1 is most graduate students. It means you can work on campus. You have access to things like curricular practical training. You can, right now at least, you can transfer to another institution, and you have the option to do OPT after graduation. OPT, optional practical training, is usually for F1 students. They usually have 3 years of, if they're in STEM, of OPT, or 1 year for non-STEM programs. Talk to your International Students and Scholars Office. But a lot of postdocs or a lot of F1 students move into postdoc positions and utilize their OPT. So you have some different rules and regulations around your work experience and your work opportunities. One thing to keep in mind is that a lot of companies like to hire students, if they're going to sponsor H-1Bs, they like to hire people on the OPT because that gives them 3 years to sort of go through the H-1B process with you. So if an industry job is something that you're really interested in, make sure that you're using that OPT in industry and not necessarily using it as a postdoc, although right now a job is a job and a postdoc might be your best option. But J1B visa students, or students or postdocs, if you have a J1 visa, you need to go speak to your International Students and Scholars Office to assess if something called the 2-year home rule actually applies to you. Not every J1 visa has the 2-year home requirement. A lot of them do. So you want to make sure that you have a sense of whether or not the 2-year home requirement applies to you, because if it does, it really limits your opportunities to move from J1 to H1B. It becomes very, very difficult. So before you're applying for jobs or even doing any of the things that I'm telling you to do to get a job in industry, go find out if it's even possible for you to get a job in the United States right now, or if your time and attention needs to be turned to getting employment back in your home country to satisfy that requirement. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be networking or building relationships with people here in the United States. It just means you're not networking for a job at this particular point in time. All right. So where are you at in your program? If you're in year 1 to 3, the whole point of the first part of the presentation is that a lot will change in the next couple of years. So I want you to evaluate options. I want you to build networks, and I want you to build key skills for success. That's what you can do in year 1 to 3. So for example, if you know you want to become a technical writer after your PhD, make sure that you're doing a lot of writing and networking with technical writers during your PhD program so that you have the right skills that you can navigate into that particular career field when you graduate. If you're close to graduation, we also want to evaluate your options. Like, are there opportunities for you to move into industry right now? Or do you need to be staying in a postdoc position? And what does that look like? Are there options for you in the United States? Would it be better for you to go to Europe, Canada, or Africa, India? Like, where would it be best for you to actually go next? And what are your opportunities? And try not to pin, if possible, try not to pin all of the opportunities that you're considering on remaining in the United States, because there are just limited opportunities for immigration right now in the United States. So it's great to have that plan. It's great to be focused on trying to stay and get work experience in the United States, but start considering other options for yourself. Postdocs, if you're already on that OPT, make sure that you're building networks with people who work at companies of interest, and see it like, how long do you have a postdoc option for, right? How long can you remain in a postdoc position, and having those conversations with your advisor. Because the question becomes like, how soon do you need to have a job in industry? And then what is the options for getting those H-1B visas? A lot of times, universities can actually use H-1B visas once you've expired your OPT. They're not capped the way that industry is, but not all. But that's not. But Texas and Florida have now limited H-1B options for in the university. So it's really, really a complicated situation. So have a lot of conversations with your PI. Know that a lot of times advisors have no understanding of the immigration process in the United States. So pair any conversations you're having with your PI or advisor with conversations that you're having with your International Students and Scholars Office. Because I've seen students get into trouble, postdocs get into trouble because their advisor is telling them to do something that they are legally unable to do because of visa restrictions. So don't talk to your advisor about options and opportunities, and then present those options and opportunities to your International Students and Scholars Office to assess whether or not those are valid and what the process would be for you to remain in a postdoc position after your OPT. It's not to slight your advisors, it's a really complicated situation, and they're just not up to date on all the nuances. And like I said, if you're a postdoc on a J1B, you want to speak to your OISS office first. You may have the 2-year home requirement that limits your employment options in the United States, and it's better to know that now than it is to wait towards the end of your postdoc and then be scrambling to line up work back home. And then think about what your priorities are. Is your goal to remain in the United States? Then we're going to have to consider a variety of different options, both in the academy and in industry. Is your job to work in industry? Well, you might consider options in the United States, but you might start doing some networking with people who work at companies in Toronto or Vancouver or London, because, Fortune 500 companies have offices across the globe. So just because you can't go work in a Fortune 500 company in the United States doesn't mean you can't do that anywhere. You might have to be employed in a different country. And are you open to that? Is that part of what you're open to? Are you interested in staying in academic research or science? Again, there are other opportunities outside the United States. Europe is a little bit more difficult right now, but there's lots of opportunities, a lot of growth in some African countries and China. So you might want to consider some of those options as well. Is your goal to gain further training in your subject matter? Well, then postdocs, again, either in the United States or abroad, might be your best options. And there might be something else that I haven't thought of. So, whatever your priorities are, you want to put that at the center of your job search. But because of the limitations on immigration opportunities in the United States right now, whatever your options are, we need to just take a broad approach and think strategically and broadly about all of our options. So, what options align with your priorities? So, again, if you want to remain in the United States, you need to be open to opportunities both in academia and out. You want to be proactive and you want to be strategic. This means you want to build networks in industry, but you might need to consider remaining in a postdoc or other options in the academy if it's not possible to move into an industry job. If you want to work in industry, you want to build networks with employers in the United States, but consider other options back home or in other countries. And you can use your alumni network and use LinkedIn to identify alumni that are maybe working in some of these companies and then are working in Germany or are working in London. So there's lots of ways that you can still utilize some of these tools that we're talking about, especially networking, to tap into that alumni network that could help you identify industry opportunities, not just in the United States, but in companies in other countries as well. If you want to stay in the academy, you want to network with collaborators and scholars in other countries, right? Don't just limit yourself to what's happening in the United States. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's not as much growth, but there are opportunities to be faculty and researchers in other countries. And you maybe are working with scholars or researchers who are working in another country. Maybe your lab has collaborators. And again, you can start looking through LinkedIn or utilizing university resources to identify alumni who are working in institutions globally. And if it's something else, it's a challenging immigration climate in the US right now. So, are there other options to achieve what you seek? That's really what I want you to think about. The US is great. I'm an immigrant. I'm from Canada, but I came to the US as an international student and I ended up staying here and I live in Denver. And there's a lot of really awesome opportunities in the United States that wouldn't have necessarily back in Canada. So I appreciate the richness of the opportunities and that many of you are really hoping to stay. And the other thing I want to keep back is, again, emphasize is like, this is just right now. And the US is a very dynamic country and a lot can change. So build relationships, be strategic, be smart. And if it doesn't work out right now, that doesn't mean forever. It just allows you to go and do other things, but you can still continue to build networks with people in the United States so that when things change and when things open back up, you have the connections you need to make a different career change and re-enter, the application process in the United States. So it's just for now, right? So just be really strategic. How do you keep moving forward in your career? How do you keep yourself safe? How do you make money? How do you support your family? Put those things at the center of your job search. And if it happens that you can stay in the US, that's fantastic. But don't limit your immigration opportunities and the next steps in your career to just here. All right, so I wanted you to be strategic in your job search. Keep in mind that given current economic and political conditions, you may not get the job that you want. So before I get into the next section, I just want to reemphasize that the career advice I'm giving you is for job seekers in industry in Canada and the United States and other Western countries with a similar business culture. So places like the UK, lots of Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand. Other countries don't operate the same way. They have different hiring cultures and different hiring practices. So if you're going to a country that has not adopted a Western business culture, then you want to do some research on what it looks like to job search in that country. So everything I'm about to say, this is what you should be doing if you're job searching in Canada, the United States, and most Western countries with a similar business culture to the United States. The strategies I'm sharing are specific for navigating from academia into the private sector, industry and nonprofit, and into administrative roles in higher education. This is not how you're going to get a job in the academy, right? I want to really emphasize that. And I'm not talking about postdoc opportunities. I'm talking specifically about getting jobs in industry. So it's not about securing postdoc or faculty positions. And again, anything I'm sharing with you, I want you to evaluate if the strategies I'm sharing are applicable in your home country or other countries you're considering. All right. So the biggest job search mistakes, if you've been participating throughout this week, you already know that some of the biggest mistakes that we're seeing people make right now is that they're trying to submit as many applications as possible. We call that the application trap. And they're using AI to help write resumes and submit as many as possible. And this is creating what they call AI sludge. And employers are frustrated and they're increasingly not utilizing online tools to even recruit because they can't tell a bot from a person. And so increasingly, employers are utilizing recruiters and networks and employee referrals to make sure that they're actually interviewing qualified candidates. When you're networking, it has to be authentic. It cannot be transactional. Remember that networking is not about asking strangers for favors. It's about building relationships and doing research. And I know that Diane and Susan talked a lot about networking and using online tools earlier. So if you haven't had a chance to watch those lessons, make sure you do that. The other thing to keep in mind is that the US and Canada, it's not a meritocracy. It's not like the best person with the best GPA and the best technical skills are going to get the job. We're building teams and company culture in the United States and Canada. That's a really important value. And so, yeah, everyone, yes, it's important that you can do the job, but people will be evaluating you on your interpersonal skills and qualities. And Diane talked a lot about how to use impact statements on resumes to help you stand out and using star statements in your interviews in order to actually talk about your work style and approach. That will be as, if not more important to the hiring decision for hiring managers in industry in Canada and the United States as your technical skills. Because I can teach technical skills, but I can't teach you to be a good problem solver, a critical thinker, and a great team player. So some numbers that you've probably already seen. The reason why submitting resumes doesn't work is that the systems are just being inundated because of AI. So LinkedIn reports that there are now 11,000 applications submitted every minute on LinkedIn, up 45% just from last year. 11,000 every minute. Like it's just not an effective strategy. Even if you are submitting resumes, keep in mind that only 3% of resumes even receive a request for an interview, and they're only going to hire one person, right, out of that. 50% of new hires in small to mid-sized companies actually come from employee referrals, and big companies use employee referrals as well. And in a survey of job seekers, only 13% of job seekers in 2025 found a job by cold applying via a job board, compared to 60% that found a job through a personal or professional connection. So if your strategy is submitting resumes to online job postings, it is time to change your strategy, right? So what would you choose? 6 out of 10 times, right? 60% of people found a job through a personal or professional connection. That works in networking. 1 out of 10 times, some other strategy like applying through job boards or DMing recruiters or hiring managers will work. If I told you that if you did this one thing, you'd win $1 million 6 out of 10 times, or if you did these other things, you'd win $1 million 1 out of 10 times, you wouldn't bother with the 1 out of 10 times, right? You would be focusing your energies on the 6 out of 10 times. So you want to make sure that you're networking, that you're talking to people. And there isn't right now, we're hearing this from a lot of different sources, but if you don't have a contact at a company right now, it's really difficult to get an interview. So really focus on finding companies, regional employers, large companies in the city or town where you live or where you want to live, being thoughtful about building relationships with alumni and professionals who are working at in those companies so that when the jobs are opening up, you have that connection in place. So transactional networking is asking strangers for favors. It's things like DMing hiring managers or employees you've never met when jobs are open and asking them to refer you. They're not going to do it. It's like asking a stranger to give you $1,000. They're not going to do it. Things like collecting LinkedIn connections, but never actually engaging, or DMing recruiters at companies of interest and asking for positions or help finding a position. Those are all examples of transactional networking. What we're talking about when we're talking about networking, we're talking about building relationships and gathering information. So networking is about research and relationships. It's about doing informational interviews with alumni from your graduate program. It's informational interviews with employees who are working at companies of interest. It's engaging with people thoughtfully on LinkedIn through and doing informational interviews, posting articles, commenting thoughtfully on posts. And it's also getting out from behind the screen and attending in-person networking events and conferences and even joining professional associations. Okay, I hear you. I don't have time to network. I need a job in a few months. I don't have a better answer, right? Networking is the best strategy that you have to stand out in this job market, to build relationships with employees who can tell you whether or not the company sponsors, who can give you advice about companies that might, who can give you advice on application documents and interviewing skills. People who work in the career field that you're interested in have a lot of information that they can give you that you'll never get from Reddit and you'll never get from like an AI agent. They are the source of very valuable information that will help you at every step of the job search process, and you want to be building those relationships. So, a successful job search, and this is where you're going to go into the PhD platform and going through the lessons that I don't have time to take you through today. You want to start by researching regional, mid-sized, or large companies where you live, but you want to start local. So there's no point if you don't live in San Francisco, don't be like trying to network with companies that have headquarters in San Francisco and have no presence in Syracuse, right? You want to be looking at companies that have a presence because you need to build relationships, and companies want to hire more locally because they don't trust AI and they want to start bringing people into the office to actually do like interviews. So this is a shift from COVID. We're seeing an increase in in-person interviews and a desire to hire local. There's an idea that you're going to come into the office 3 days out of the week at least, if not longer. And so you want to really be focusing on local. The reason why I talk about regional, mid-size, or large companies is that companies either have policies around all companies have policies around sponsorship. Either they do it or they don't. And so small companies don't really have the option to hire you long term. And they may be open to like having you work for them for 3 years in an OPT situation, knowing that you will have to leave. But if you're interested in staying long term in the United States, then you need to work at a company that can sponsor you. And those companies tend to be regional to mid-sized employers and large companies that have offices where you live because they have the resources to do it. You need to be targeted. So sometimes people panic apply for anything that they find of interest. But a technical writer, a project manager, a research scientist are all very different careers. And you'll need to pick one because you'll need to create a network and application documents. And you can't really do this for a whole variety of different career fields. Network, network, network. Build relationships with people who work at companies of interest and professionals in your chosen career before you need that job. Be authentic. And think about quality over quantity. Job searching is not a numbers game. If you are applying to a job that you found that looks awesome, tailor your resume. Like, don't worry so much about the application scanning software and all of that stuff. If you're using the keywords that are in the job document and you're tailoring your document, you should be fine. But when we hired recently, you wouldn't believe, like we had 300 people apply for the job. A lot of people did that apply now on LinkedIn. I didn't even bother talking to them because I said in my job ad, I won't even consider applications submitted via apply now on LinkedIn. You had to actually like follow the process that I had laid out in the job ad. So only 100 people, less than 100 people actually read that part of the job ad and sent me an email, and only some of those people customized their documents. In the end, out of 300 people, it was like 20 people that actually took the time to properly apply for the job. So if you're going to be like just applying for jobs, don't spray and pray. Be really tailored, update your documents, be really smart about what you're doing, and you might be successful because you've been thoughtful in your applications. Quality over quantity. Networking is still better, but if you're taking this approach of just applying for jobs, more is not better. Be thoughtful, be like, do your research, make sure that the documents are really tailored to that job and that company and the position, and you might be surprised. All right, so I don't have the opportunity to answer all the questions that I'm sure Diane is getting right now about a successful job search strategy. I want you to consult the Beyond Prof PhD career training platform because we have in-depth lessons on every single one of these topics, and there's a lot that goes into them, and I can't answer that as quickly as much as I would want to. Okay, so a job search can last many months. It's a tough job market right now, and even domestic job seekers are spending 6 to 9 months job searching. So I want you to start now. All right, so why does it take so long? Well, as we just talked about, you need to research companies and industries where you live and want to live. That's going to take some time. You need to build your network with professionals who can help you in your job search. You need to draft compelling application materials, and in some fields, you'll actually need a portfolio. You'll want to practice interviewing for positions, which means that you will probably apply for and even maybe be interviewed for a couple of positions before you actually secure a job. So, if you need a job quickly or you're interested in an internship, 30 days, you want to it's going to take you at least 30 days to evaluate your career options and identify a targeted career field and companies of interest. And then you're going to spend 80% of your job search time networking, and it's going to take a couple of months to actually build relationships with people who work at companies of interest so that your applications are starting to land in companies where you have connections as opposed to just cold applying for jobs, because that's going to increase the chance that you're going to get an interview. So the 3 to 6 months you're going to be applying, you've got some networks, you've got some referrals, you're starting to maybe get some interviews. Interview processes at companies usually last anywhere from 2 or more weeks, especially in the summer, and this can really drag out. And then you're likely given a couple of days to actually accept the offer. So it just, even a fast job search is going to take 3 months, because it's just going to take a while to get the networks, get the interview, go through a few interviews to really get the hang of it, and then actually get a job offer. So my advice for you, doctoral students who are in year 1 to 3 of your program, start by completing the discovery stage in the PhD career training platform. You'll find it under step 1 in the menu. And then I want you, it's under the research stage, I want you to understand what it takes to be competitive for academic jobs in your field, if this is your first choice. Because if you're going to spend the next 1 to 3 years, or sorry, the next couple of years trying to prepare for an academic job, you want to know the steps that you need to take in order to be an eligible candidate for those positions in your field. I also want you, though, to research non-academic employers and identify 1 or 2 non-academic careers where there's a lot of growth and opportunity. And that's kind of hard right now because there's a lot changing with AI. So you want to continue to do that research and follow those trends so that when you graduate, if you don't end up in an academic position, you have a clear pathway and you have networks that can help you land a job in industry. So what I want you to do is, at least once you do the discovery stage and research academic career options and identify non-academic options, I want you to plan to spend 3 to 5 hours every month for the next few years networking with non-academic professionals. That can include connecting on LinkedIn, going to in-person networking events, and doing informational interviews. So have an idea of where you might go, have an idea of some industries you're interested in, have some ideas of positions you might want to pursue, and then spend 3 to 5 hours. That's it. 3 to 5 hours a month, just networking. That's all I want you to do. And just do it for a couple of years and see where you get. Doctoral students who are graduating soon, also complete the discovery stage in the PhD career training platform. I want you to research non-academic employers and identify 1 academic career field with lots of growth and opportunity right now. And I want you to dedicate 80% of your job search time to networking with non-academic professionals, connecting on LinkedIn, in-person networking, and informational interviews. And I want you to avoid the application trap. Submitting resumes cold to online applications will just lead to frustration. So that's for doctoral students who are graduating soon who want to move directly into industry. That's what I want you to do. Because if you can use that OPT in industry, that's going to increase the chance that that company can sponsor you for that H-1B. So that's one of the things you want to really be strategic about. You can also be applying for postdoc positions as a backup plan, because that's still going to keep you in the country and keep you fed and keep you with healthcare. So it's not wrong to apply for some postdoc positions while you continue to look for work in academia. Remember that OPT, right now at least, can transfer between the lab and industry, so long as the job in industry aligns with your training. So talk to your OISS office, but the postdoc can be the backup plan while you try and get a job in industry if you're interested in an industry job. If you're a postdoc right now and you're trying to get a job in industry, seek clarification on your visa status, especially a J1 visa, if you're a J1 visa holder. And then if you are eligible, research non-academic employers and identify 1 career with lots of growth and opportunity. If you find that your options are limited in the US, make sure that you research other countries and seek legal advice for how you might move into those other countries, right? So there might be other options. I know Canada right now has actually invested a lot of money in bringing in scientists and researchers, especially from the United States. So you can look at that, but consult a lawyer and get a sense of like what that actually looks like for you. And avoid the application trap. Submitting resumes cold to online applications will just lead to frustration. Now, if you're one of those people that are attending thinking, oh crap, I need a job in 90 days, I don't have 6 months, what we need to do is we need to supercharge your networking. What I want you to do is a scan of your campus resources. So look at what resources the OISS office has, the Career Center, Alumni Office. Some universities maintain a list of regional employers that sponsor. You want to see if your institution has such a list. I don't know if they do, but that's a question for your Career Center or your International Students and Scholars Office. Because then you can look and see, start building networks strategically at those companies. Career centers know that this is a problem for international students, and so they do have resources to help. So does the International Students and Scholars Office. Use LinkedIn to connect with alumni from your program. If you're just connecting with people you don't know and have no relationship with, they're less likely to actually accept your networking request. So try and focus on people who share a common background with you. So that could also include finding people who are expats from your home country via LinkedIn or community groups. You want to write a post on LinkedIn reintroducing yourself to help your network and asking for leads or help. And be open to opportunities that are outside your ideal position or company, so long as it aligns with your visa requirements. And I hear you. Companies reject me when they learn I require sponsorship. Companies either sponsor or they don't. You can't change policy. So that's really helpful information. And it's something that you should take seriously when you're networking with people. So when you're networking with people, if they also tell you that their company can't hire international students, you can't change that policy. But and we had somebody write, and I hope that this person is attending today because I will get to your email, but I had to write this presentation yesterday from scratch. Anyone you talk to is part of your network, right? So if you talk to somebody and they can't sponsor you, that's fine. There's still somebody that you can connect with. You can still do an informational interview. You can still learn a lot from them. So if someone says, well, I know you want to do an informational interview. I can see you're an international student. My company doesn't sponsor. You can just write back and say, like, I understand. Thank you so much for telling me that. However, I still have some questions about being a data scientist in a healthcare company. And I would just really like to have a conversation with you to learn more because you can build that relationship because that person might change jobs. That person might move to another country, another company. You might go back you might move to the UK and do data science for Salesforce and then be able to apply later down the road. So you just don't know where your life is going to lead. Every person you talk to, every interaction you have is somebody who could potentially help you down the line if you treat them with respect, treat them network authentically, and continue to build and maintain those relationships. So just be really professional in all of your interactions. And thank the person for telling you that their company can sponsor because that means you don't have to waste your time trying to apply for those jobs. And at the end of the day, I just really want to say this isn't about you. This isn't about your value. This isn't about your. You are incredibly talented. You are incredibly gifted. It's just a really hard job market right now for everyone. I know it's discouraging and I know it's hard. I've been unemployed. I've been an international student. I know that this is really hard and a really frustrating time for a lot of students, and I hear that and I hear you. So just keep this in mind, right? It's not about you. Focus on what you can control, which is getting a great education, building those networks, and building multiple plans to make sure that you're safe, to make sure that you're employed, to make sure that you have lots of opportunities for your careers. And just remember that there are opportunities out there for smart, creative people. You just have to get through the noise to find them. And so people hire people, right? They don't hire a piece of paper, they don't hire a credential. People hire people. So all of this networking and all of this connecting is the way that you will stand out in this job market. And it's going to maximize your opportunities now and in the future for to unlock your education and build a meaningful career. So we are 3 minutes past time, but Diane and I can stay for a few more minutes if there's some additional questions that we want to get to.
Yeah, for sure. There were some folks who had a lot of questions about networking and like starting the conversation and how to know what to say. Do you have some guidelines or advice for those folks?
Yeah. So we do have a resource in the platform, which I'm going to share, which is how to introduce yourself when networking. So that would be one of the things that I would tell you to come and watch. Um, so it just sort of depends on getting started. So if you're having a in-person conversation with someone, have some questions prepared. Like, what do you do? Tell me more about that. You can also ask questions that could be potentially helpful for you, which are things like, so what are some of the biggest challenges that your company is facing right now? Where do you see your company in 5 to 7 years, or your division or your team? Or where do you see, how do you think AI will impact technical writing? And what are you already seeing? So have questions that gets the person talking about themselves, but gives you information that like isn't necessarily going to get you a job, but if you are going to get an interview, you'll have a sense of the changing field, right? So again, networking is about gathering information, it's about research, and it's about relationships. So one of the things that you could potentially do is use like one of the AI agents like Claude or ChatGPT and tell them where you're going. Be like, I'm going to go to this conference. These are the kinds of people that attend. This is what I'm interested in. Can you give me some ideas of some questions I might ask, right? And then also make sure that you have a great elevator pitch. And we have some resources to also help you. That's the how to introduce yourself when networking. So who are you and what do you want to do next, right? So I'm a graduate student at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I got a STEM background. I'm working in biomedical life sciences, and I'm really excited about the pharmaceutical industry, and that's where I'm hoping to work next. So that's really easy, right? It doesn't get me into like the details of my research. It doesn't get me into like a niche. I'm not even introducing myself as a PhD or a postdoc. I'm just introducing myself as someone who's earning a graduate degree, or I'm working as a research scientist and in the Triangle area. And I'm just here because I'm really excited about the future of the biomedical industry in the Triangle area, and I'm here to learn more. What do you do? So those are some things that you can do. Don't overthink it, but you can use. This is actually a really great place for like the brainstorming feature of AI. They can actually help you think about your elevator pitch, help you write a story. You can practice it, and then they can also help you develop some questions that you might be able to ask when you're having these conversations.
Mhm.
But focus on the other person. Let them ask about you. And then be very mindful when they ask about you that you don't monopolize the conversation, because it's an opportunity for you to build a relationship and get information. So you want to focus on that part, and not so much on like you. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. With regards to perhaps looking at options in other countries, how would you find out what the requirements are or immigration things that you need to work out? I think someone was kind of thinking, well, can we just go to Canada if we have, education
No.
in the US? Which no. So how would you kind of go through the steps of figuring out, okay, what is required for me to go to that other country
Yeah.
who may have an opportunity?
So you can use like a Google search, like if you were looking for international visa options for like in Canada, the Canadian government has like a list of requirements. You can, of course, again, like some of the AI agents could actually be really helpful because they can do the searches. Don't trust but verify. That's the thing I want to say about AI and all of this. Like, it's going to give you some information, but you want to make sure what it's telling you is actually true. So you can have it like give a summary of like, here's my background and I want to apply and I've read about these visa options. Can you give me a little bit more of a sense of what the visa requirements are? And then ask it to give you links. I did this last night. It was giving me information and I was like, can you give me the link for that? And it was sourcing my website, but it was telling me it was sourcing a different website. And I was like, that's not on my website. Where did you get that information from? And then it produced the appropriate link. So get the links to the original sources, prompt the AI to give you those sources, and then verify that information as well. And then ultimately, you may need to actually like use a lawyer, immigration attorney to help you with those applications. That's usually advised. So it's, yeah, you have to make sure that you're understanding what the requirements are for like the EU, different UK, and Canada, Australia. Every country is going to look a little bit different. So do your research on where you want to go. And then the other thing I would do before you start applying for visas is like network to make sure the jobs are there. So Canada, for example, has brought in a lot of immigrants, and sometimes their accreditation doesn't transfer to their profession, and so they can't actually work in their career field. So that sometimes happens in the healthcare profession, for example. So they get to go to Canada because they're a doctor, but then they can't work as a doctor when they're in Canada. So do a lot of networking before you're like, Toronto, here I come, to make sure that there are job options. Even if you got a visa, what does it look like? What's the process? And vet different countries before you actually start immigrating elsewhere. That's awesome. Any other
Awesome.
questions we cover?
There's like some very specific questions, like if you're a postdoc on an H-1B visa,
Oh,
is that possible to move to
no.
industry?
Yeah,
Okay.
H-1B visas that are, and this is a great question for your international students and scholars office. My understanding is that there's a lottery in industry, and so they cap the number of H-1 visas to 85,000 a year. But nonprofits, which include most universities, are H-1B exempt. So that means, or lottery exempt, which means they can give H-1B visas sort of in an unlimited number. And so they typically, my understanding is that you cannot move an H-1B from a nonprofit to a for-profit company. That's my understanding. So verify that. Um, but if you can get like a green card at the end of your H-1B, through the university, then you can actually go work in industry. But typically, H-1B visas granted in a nonprofit cannot be transferred. Yeah.
Awesome. Uh,
Other really specific niche questions. I am not a lawyer. Diana is not. We have read our eyes out on these topics so that we can try and do the best we can in answering your information. But really, please, if you have a lot of questions when we're done this webinar, write them down and then reach out and make an appointment at your International Students and Scholars office. If this presentation has been helpful in giving you some ideas and some thoughts, make sure that you go and make an appointment with your International Students and Scholars office. The other resource you might check out, some universities subscribe to something called InterStride. So you could ask if they have that. They do webinars and have some legal advice around immigration. Not every university subscribes, but I do know that that's a company that often works with international students and scholars, and that it is a subscription that your institution has to pay for, I believe, but you can check and see if they have those resources as well. So, yeah,
awesome. I think we'll wrap up there for today.
awesome.
Yeah, but thank you everyone for attending our week of conference.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it was great to do this presentation. It was a lot to put together, so that's why Diane and Susan let me do it. So. Awesome. All right. Well, check out the resources in the PhD career training platform. Spend a lot of time the next couple of months just building that network. And I really want to emphasize that your institution is there to help you. And there's probably a lot of resources that exist that you might not know about. So also spend some time talking to the Career Center as a graduate student, your postdoc office, Office of Research, as well as your International Students and Scholars Office to make sure that you're getting all the help that your institution can possibly provide you, because they know it's hard and they care about their international students and scholars, and they're doing the best they can to help you. So make sure that you're one of those people that they know of and who need and that you need help. And be specific in what you're looking for. Don't just go in and be like, help me. Have like some specific things that you need and see if they can direct you to the resources on your campus that can help you for sure. Awesome. Okay. Take care. Thank you.